Okay, I think I'm gonna get us rolling, Mary. Happy Monday, everyone. Thanks for joining us for Ask a NoCo Pro. We are highlighting and asking questions of local pros. Last week we had Drew from Quality Home Inspections on. He answered a ton of questions, frequently asked questions from other agents about home inspections. We did a lot of research on well inspections. I learned a lot personally. This week, we have Mary Brewer from Brewer Appraisals on with us today. And I would love to have her introduce herself, and then we'll start. So, Mary, tell us a little bit about yourself and how
Yeah.
you got into appraisals.
All right. Well, let's see. So my name is Mary Brewer, and I own Brewer Appraisal Services LLC. I'm out of Greeley, and I had wanted to become a real estate agent actually ever since I was 6 years old when my parents moved from one side of Loveland to the other. And I thought that our real estate agent, Kathy Vance, over at the group, just had the coolest job ever. So from that point, I was trying to get into the real estate world, I guess. I knew that my parents were looking for a house, and I knew what they were looking for. So I actually went through the Reporter Herald newspaper in the classified section and circled the ones that might work for them. And they actually ended up buying one of the houses that I circled, and they still live there today. But from that point on, I was, gosh, starting in high school, I was an assistant to various real estate agents. I worked at First National Bank and had my lending license for a very short amount of time, although that was it was at the CSU branch, so we did not have a whole lot of students there that were getting mortgages. I think I did a couple for professors, and so I don't claim to know too much about the lending world, but dipped my toe into that for a while. And then on my 23rd birthday, I actually activated my real estate license and became an agent at Remax in Fort Collins, Remax Advanced. And it was pretty short after that that I figured out that I absolutely hated it. Being an agent was so much more stressful than being an assistant. I don't like the negotiations part of real estate. I'm not a great salesperson. I quickly figured out that my favorite part of real estate was figuring out, how much should we list the property for, how much should we offer on the property, and that sort of thing. So from there, I started taking a look at what it would take to become an appraiser, and I ended up how do I want to say it, apprenticing under another certified residential appraiser down in Frederick. That process took, let's see, it was 2,500 hours and a little over 2 years. And then I became an appraiser myself out on my own in 2018. And now I do appraisals for lenders for refinances and purchases, pre-listing appraisals, divorces, estates, all sorts of stuff. So hopefully I can answer some of the questions that you guys have today, coming from both a real estate agent and an appraiser point of view. I know that when I became an appraiser, I was honestly kind of shocked in some of the ways that we were taught to find value as appraisers versus how we were taught to find value as agents or how we were taught to price listings. And I thought, God, no wonder we have quite a bit of, disputes or butting of heads when it comes to this, because a lot of times the methodology that we're using to price listings or find value is actually pretty different. So my hope is to kind of open up those the communication there, so that we can figure out a good way to bring our industries together and make sure that we're both on the same page.
I love it. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for giving us a little bit of background.
Sure.
I know we have Bree and Jenny on. Do you guys have any questions to start for Mary today about appraisals, appraisers, just the valuation process in general? And you can put it in the chat or unmute yourselves. No pressure either way.
I have,
I'll start.
oh,
Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead, Jamie.
No, you're good. I just have ones in case people don't have questions. So you're good to go.
Perfect. I have two, but I'll just do one and then, we can round robin it or however. Rather than putting this in the chat, I feel like it'd just be easier for both of these to chat
Sure.
over this. So let me see. Okay, so first of all, I guess one question is, with this new NAR settlement, if sellers are offering their commissions, as a seller concession, and they're not specifying, just saying it's, say for a $500,000 house, I guess, let's say that someone is offering $20,000 in concessions for whatever the buyer wants to use it for. If the house is listed at 500,000 and all the comps are, so I just want, like, are the concessions taken out of the price, how you look at it? So if it, is offering, if it's 500,000 with $20,000 in concessions, would the real value be like 480?
That's
Am I
correct.
understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Typically,
Perfect.
yeah. So typically we're going to be making dollar for dollar adjustments for concessions.
Perfect.
So yeah, the net price, or what the seller is actually getting out of it, is that 480. So yeah, we are typically making those dollar for dollar adjustments. It's going to be interesting to see, what happens as far as are we going to be, seeing more seller concessions for that, and what the new market norm becomes. Because typically the rule for making those concessions is, we have to ask ourselves, okay, if those concessions weren't to happen, would the transaction have happened? And if the
Yeah,
answer is
yeah.
yes, it would have still happened, then maybe we don't make a dollar for dollar adjustment. We might not need that at all, because if it's just kind of built into what the market expectation is, then maybe we wouldn't be making those adjustments. But if the answer is no, without that seller concession, the buyer's not going to be able to afford a rate buy down, and they're not even going to qualify for this loan. The answer in that case is, yeah, we're gonna need to put some consideration into that. But yes, you are correct. We're typically making dollar for dollar adjustments for those concessions.
Perfect. And then just really quick with that, I know, there's a spot in the MLS to put concessions. They're not always put there. They're not always accurate. And I've
Yeah.
had phone calls, from appraisers on previous listings, just calling and seeing if there were concessions and things like that. I guess, do you think it'll be more accurate on the MLS and/or our appraisers? I mean, and maybe they do all call, and I don't know, but is it a common practice where they're all calling previous, comps that they're comparing to see about concessions, just to make sure, like nothing, it is as accurate as possible?
Yes, yeah, we should, everybody should be giving you a call to make sure that that information is accurate. We can of course double check things like, the price and the square footage, and, and the date that it sold and was recorded, and all of that from the
Mhm.
county assessor. But we're supposed to be giving everybody a call just to verify, hey, was this an arm's length transaction?
Yeah.
Was there something weird about it? Did the house smell like smoke or cat pee, or something along those lines? Just to make
Mhm.
sure that there's nothing weird going on. But yeah, that data should be being verified.
Perfect. Well, that was super helpful. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Jenna, you got anything from me? Mhm. All
That's
right.
okay.
I-
As you're here, if you think of things, let us know. Bree, what's your next question?
Okay, so I have one other, this one's super specific. I have a listing coming up, and it is in a neighborhood, so this house, the recent comps in the past 3 to 6 months are, the houses are a lot smaller in terms of square footage and bedrooms. And I know you guys, adjust for that. There are two exact floor plans that sold. One was maybe, I don't know, like 9 months ago, and one was a year ago. So, they're past like that 3 to 6 month mark. Could I use that, in the packet I prep to an appraiser and like as support for pricing, or does it really need to be looking at comps in the past 3 to 6 months?
I would definitely include those if there's nothing
Okay.
with similar square footage that has recently sold.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I would like to mention as far as square footage for comparables, is recognizing that we do have to split it on the appraisal. We have to split it up into above and below grade square footage.
Yes.
And so it's good practice to try and stay within about 20% of each of those.
Okay.
So say
Okay.
you got a 1,000 square foot ranch with a 1,000 square foot basement. you're probably going to be looking for 800 to 1200 square feet above grade, and 800 to 1200 square feet below grade. If you don't have anything similar to that, it's perfectly acceptable to go farther back in time. It could be, if you've got competing neighborhoods nearby, that you would say, buyers would be looking for that sort of house in those neighborhoods, similar amenities. It could be appropriate to go out there and see if there's, something sold more recently there that's more similar in square footage. But if it's been 9 to 12 months since the model matches have sold, an appraiser is probably going to go that far back as well, and then just be sure that they have a solid time adjustment.
Perfect. That's so helpful, especially the 20% square footage for above and below. I never knew that. So that's a great tip.
Yes. Well, and a lot of times we'll get, I'll have agents try to say, oh, well, they'll give me comparables that have similar total square footage or similar total finished square footage. But unfortunately, I would not, like, underwriting would not love to see those a lot of the time, because typically above grade square footage is going to be more valuable than that below grade square footage. So on the appraisal grid, we do have to split it up into, the above and below grade, and they're typically being valued at a different price per square foot.
That makes sense. Awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Really good questions, you guys. I have one too. And this one is, a very common one that I get from buyers personally. But in your words, in your appraiser words, what's the big difference between an inspection, like a home inspection, and getting an appraisal?
Sure. So in every single report that I do, and pretty much, that everybody else does too, it's our scope of work is that I'm an expert in valuing the house. I am not an expert when it comes to home inspections. I'm not a roofer. I'm not a structural engineer. I am not, an expert in identifying and remediating black mold or anything like that. So an appraisal should never be relied upon as a home inspection. You definitely want to get a home inspector. Now, when I come in, doing an appraisal, if I see something that I'm like, ooh, I'm not sure about, if I see a crack in the foundation, or, maybe the roof looks a little messed up, if I see something that looks like black mold, I'm going to call for a third-party inspection, so that we can get somebody who actually is an expert in that matter out there to identify and see, okay, is there a problem? What would it take to fix it? Or no, it's okay. And we can move forward with funding the loan.
Not fast enough to the mute button either today. That's a great answer. I love that.
Yeah.
Jenny, in the meantime, have you thought of any questions? If so, feel free to drop them in the chat. While you're thinking, I've got another one for you. I would say, how do you recommend that realtors go about pricing rural properties? So properties where, they may not have another house for a couple miles, or could be up in the mountains, right? Like, how do you recommend realtors go about at least starting the research process for pricing homes that aren't necessarily in a tight-knit subdivision?
Sure. So if it's not, cookie cutter house, you may consider getting an appraiser out there, just to do it, because it's going to get complicated kind of quickly. A lot of people are like, oh, agents will be like, I have to stay within, 1 mile of the property, and it has to have sold within the past 6 months. That is not true. You can definitely make an exception. And, for rural properties where your nearest neighbor might, it's maybe farther than a mile away, or those mountain cabins or something like that, you're definitely going to have to go out farther in area and time in order to find something that is probably similar to your property. There's probably a lot more adjustments that are going to have to be made for things like land and amenities, and, are you on septic or, well, that sort of thing. So those can get, that's what we would call a complex appraisal. Is, it's not going to be a cookie cutter situation, and it's going to be probably a little bit difficult to price. But just keep in mind, you can definitely go out farther than a mile, please do, as long as it's, what you would think a buyer would consider, a comparable area and a similar property to your listing. then it would be an appropriate comparable. And it's, got to be similar in size and zoning, like, oh, are horses allowed? Can I have outbuildings, that sort of thing.
I think that's great advice. Jenny wanted you to restate what you meant about the 20% above or below grade.
Yeah, sure. So Jenny, we usually like to, because we're adjusting at different rates for above and below grade square footage. We like to stay within about 20% of the above grade square footage and the below grade square footage. So say you have a ranch with 1,000 square feet above grade, you would probably want to limit your comparable search to ranches with like 800 to 1,200 square foot above grade. And then if it had, another 1,000 square feet in the basement, again, search for 800 to 1,200 square feet in the basement. That's typically, that'll keep your adjustments, kind of lower down. There is another, it was an old Fannie Mae requirement and they got rid of it, but a lot of banks still want to see it. They don't want your gross adjustments to exceed 25%. And if we start, if we start using properties that are dissimilar in square footage, we're going to start seeing some pretty high gross adjustments on the sheet. So just important to, we usually try to stay within, 20%. And I've done, appraiser polls in my appraiser group on Facebook and whatnot. Some people have said 10, 15, but the resounding answer was kind of start at 20. And then if you can work your way in from that, if you're able to, great. But if not, then 20% is pretty solid metric there.
I love it. Does that answer the question, Jenny?
Yeah, it does. And I see Bree has another question in there, and I do as well.
Would you like to start? I have Bree's hearted, so I'll bring it up next. Sure.
So what about zip codes for comparables? If you're comparing something in 80524 versus 80526, 80528, how do you adjust for that?
Sure. Well, and that really depends on the market area. I would ask, do your buyers, are they willing to pay more for a home in 80626 versus 80625 or something like that? Like, are your buyers willing to pay extra for one of those zip codes?
It depends, I guess. It's like the old town properties versus the south side of town, same
Right.
kind of square footage, but year plays into place. So I guess that's where it gets difficult for me, because some people don't want old town. Some people want to be, some people do. Some people pay more money. So how do you kind of,
Sure. And
calculate for that?
Yeah. No, and that's a fair question. And that's where, when you've got a whole bunch of houses that are together and we're not talking about acreage properties anymore, if you can stay within, I suppose it could be within the same zip code, but like the same school district, or, if there's something that buyers really, do seem to care about, that they're willing to pay more to be in one certain area than another, then we got to keep that in mind. But, as an appraiser, it's, I think as a real estate agent, you guys have some great insight on that. Whenever people ask me how I would adjust for, the school district or, a certain zip code or neighborhood or something like that, you can ask yourself, you could ask your buyers, hey, if you had to put it in a dollar amount or, a percentage amount, how much more would you be willing to pay for a house over there? Which is kind of a funny question. But that's essentially what we're looking at as appraisers is, what is the buyer demand for that certain amenity and what are they willing to pay for it? And usually we'll be able to see with, comparable sales, I'll be able to see like, okay, houses in Old Town are selling for, X amount of dollars more or a certain percentage more than, these homes that are more on the south side. So that's kind of, I know that's a very vague answer, but it's figuring out, what are your buyers willing to pay more for and by how much. So I know that's not a magical, answers your question type of thing, but it's pretty much just looking at market trends and, seeing how much more people are willing to pay in certain neighborhoods than others.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if you can stay within the same neighborhood for that situation, I would definitely recommend doing that. Yeah.
Love it. Okay, Bree says, what do you like to see in an appraisal packet provided by the listing agents?
Sure. Okay. So, of course, and I've asked, other appraisers this as well. We all love getting the appraisal packets. At least around here we do. The more information that we have, the better, honestly. So, we want to see the comparables that you used. A lot of times we've got a lot of information on the MLS just based on, what kind of updates it's had and everything. But if you can break that down even further, because I know our character count is limited on the MLS. But if you've just got like a list of, improvements, what year they were made, possibly, about how much they cost, that sort of thing. We do like to see that. If you know something about the comparable properties, that it smelled like smoke or cat pee or, something like that, or that it was a non-arm's length transaction, maybe you showed the property to one of your buyers. And so you noticed something about it that, that I wouldn't necessarily see from the MLS, or maybe it's something that the listing agent wouldn't be super forthcoming with, such as, the cat pee smell or something like that. Definitely let me know about that. Let's see. Oh, I also do want to know if you got multiple offers on the property, because I think that's a very strong demonstration of what buyers are willing to pay. That's pretty much fair market value evidence right there. So if you can, you don't have to provide the contracts or anything like that, but if you can just say, okay, this is, maybe like in the spreadsheet that maybe you would show your seller that, here's offer number 1, offer number 2, offer number 3, sales prices, concessions, what you're going to net from it, that sort of thing. That's really helpful for us as well. And then also in those appraisal packets, I do like to mention, make sure that you're taking a look at them, right before you list the property. And then, hopefully the appraiser is coming soon after that. You're going under contract quickly after that. But also take a look at it, sooner than, I guess I should say, take a look at it when you're about to list the property. I know a lot of times we'll meet with our sellers, 6 months ahead in advance. And so all of your comparables and your pricing is based off of, now things that would have been good comparables maybe 6 months ago. But we have to look at what happened within the past 6 months and make sure that your listing price is still, it is still reasonable, and that you're not leaving money on the table or anything like that. But just to be sure to update those CMA packets, before the appraiser comes out, just to check for new comparables as well. Does that help?
Yeah, that's super helpful. So thank you.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Okay, I have a question up next. I would say, what are some critical factors you consider when appraising properties in specifically Northern Colorado? Like, is there anything that someone maybe who's new here or new to real estate should keep into consideration in this area?
Sure. Well, and I think one of the things that you have to be careful with is that geographic competency, I guess. So especially when you're new to the area, just becoming familiar with all the different neighborhoods, and their desirability, I guess. And what buyers are willing to, which neighborhoods buyers would consider similar or not. Let's see. I definitely be on the lookout for metro tax districts. If you have a listing coming up in a metro tax district, I definitely want to use comparables that are within that metro tax district or another similar one, because a lot of times those taxes can be high enough that it's going to prevent buyers from being able to afford it or something like that. So I definitely do like to consider that, and we do have quite a few metro tax districts over here in Northern Colorado. Then another thing, let's see, property rights. So, gas and oil rights or water rights, that sort of thing you want to be aware of. That might not really come into effect unless it's, an acreage property or something like that. But definitely something to be on the lookout for as well. Oh, and then this, just speaking of property rights, this is just kind of a general the thing is we are not allowed to compare condos and townhomes. because those are two different property rights. Condos are just air rights, and then the townhome is going to be, you know, you actually own the walls, you own the land under it. So I do get a lot of agents that will, you know, in their CMA packet, they will have, you know, they'll be comparing condos to townhomes and vice versa. But we are actually not allowed to do that. And a good way to figure out, you know, which is looking at the legal description. Condos are going to have a unit number, or it'll say condo or condominium in there. And then a townhome is going to have a lot and block description, you know, or absolutely reach out to, you know, your title folks and get that verified. Because I know in Greeley, we even have, there's like, I don't know, it's like Northview townhomes condos or something like that. So it can get a little bit confusing and convoluted. But just be aware that that with those two property rights, we usually do see quite a significant difference in value for condos versus townhomes, even if they're exactly the same in square footage. Let me see. Jenny says, is there a difference in pricing when there is ownership in water shares versus water rights? Okay, so, and this is interesting too, like with the ditch shares and stuff, usually what I've seen is that people will sell those separately, and that won't be included with the price of, you know, the listing, and that those are sold separately. So it gets a little bit different when you're trying to include them with the property as well. So that is a good question, and I am not like a water rights, you know, riparian rights are definitely not my forte. So I couldn't tell you that specifically, but I know a lot of times for the shares of water, people are separating that out into a separate bill of sale instead of the house. So
Really good questions. I think this is a really good one. I have agents who ask me, you know, for appraiser contact when they're listing the home. Like, how do you recommend listing agents partner with appraisers to make sure that they are, you know, listing homes at value, not too far below, not too far above?
So for like a pre-listing appraisal type of thing?
Yeah, I would say, you know, just a listing agent who's like, well, you know, I want to get this value right. Like, how do you recommend that they partner with local appraisers, or do you?
Sure. So this gets kind of tricky because I can and you know what I do for agents is you know, if they don't want a full-on, you know, pre-listing appraisal, I can send you what I would consider comparables. But I can't give you a value range, or I can't say, you know, Jenny, that sounds like a reasonable listing price, because even if it's verbally, even if I say it, it counts as an appraisal.
Yeah.
So that is like a huge liability. So it's got to be, you know, if you're looking for a value from me, then you got to get an appraisal. Otherwise, you know, I could get in big trouble.
I think that's a great answer. And that's why that's kind of what I tell listing agents as well. But yeah, I was just curious how you go about it.
Yeah. Let me see. Bruce says, are pre-listing appraisals the same price as regular appraisal once under contract? Typically, yes, or I'm given a little bit of a discount for the pre-listing appraisal, just because if it's a private appraisal, there's a lot less, you know, lender jargon that's going to go into it that I have to do. You know, so I'll maybe give like a $50 discount for that. For, you know, our cookie cutter homes in the cookie cutter subdivision, which, you know, agents are usually not asking for pre-listing appraisals on those. They're asking for the complex ones. But personally, my rate is for appraisals is $550 for a lender, and then $500 for a private appraisal. Now you are probably going to see, you know, charges that are higher than that, just because you know, certain lenders are probably going to have those built in, or, you know, they have to pay their appraisal management companies or their underwriting or people that review those. But that would be my base charge for a pre-listing appraisal would be about $500, and that's kind of the going rate in the market area.
Love it. I would love if you know anything about this, but I would love for you to speak on the changes that have come through with the property inspection waivers, the appraisal waivers, as to where some of these appraisal waivers are still requiring someone to go out to the property and do kind of a mini appraisal. Have you dealt with one of these yet?
I don't love them. I really don't. So the bifurcated or hybrid appraisal. What's that, Jamie?
most people don't know about them still. They're going, I'm getting an appraisal waiver, but they don't realize that someone is still going out to the property.
Yeah, well, and so like I refinanced my house, it was during COVID. But I ironically I got an appraisal waiver and I was like, okay. Nobody came out to the house. And there are different types of appraisals. There's desktop appraisals where the person, the actual appraiser might not even be coming out to the house. They're probably not. They're sending a third party. Typically the bank has trained this person, but I am very leery of that, and I feel like there's a lot of liability. So essentially what happens is they send out Joe Schmo, or like, please, hopefully at least a real estate agent, that
Yes.
knows how to measure a property and take pictures, and that's not gonna, hide things about the condition of the home. um or you're just driving by the property and taking a picture from the outside and making certain assumptions about what it looks like on the inside. And then these desktop appraisals, appraisers are just writing them up. They're short. I don't do them. My errors and omissions insurance won't even cover them. So I don't do them. Because I've seen appraisers getting, offered $85 to do these. So they're
Yeah.
asking me to produce a value, and it comes with the same liability as a full appraisal, but, I'm not there. I haven't seen the property. I haven't personally measured it. And they're asking me to produce a value and take on all this liability for, a fifth of what an actual appraisal is worth. um, you know, Typically you're going to have some issues as far as, not measuring the property right. Maybe that geographic competency piece, because I've also seen desktop appraisals being done by appraisers that are out of state, and I'm like, you can't tell me that you know what's going on in Greeley, Colorado, when you're in Nebraska
Right.
or Wyoming or something like that. So I am personally not a fan. I know that lenders are doing it to try and save buyers some money. But I've heard quite a few horror stories. I don't know about you, Jamie. What are your feelings on them, or agents pop on
Yes.
it?
I mean, this new thing where like we will get what's called it's a PIW, which is a regular appraisal waiver, but they're calling it an ACE, which is an automated collateral evaluation plus PDR. So the property data report, like a lender could possibly say we have an appraisal waiver, and then someone who's possibly not even an appraiser is doing that report. So I like, the reason I asked this question is mainly just to tell listing agents and buyers agents, like when you get an appraisal waiver with your lender, like ask a couple more questions. Is it a full appraisal waiver, like nobody's going out to the property? Or is it a PDR, a property data report, which means that maybe an appraiser is going out, maybe some random guy who just got the license for this, maybe another real estate agent. Do you want another real estate agent inspecting the property? Hopefully they know what they're talking about, and they're positive about everything. Not every listing agent I know is positive about other listing in the area. So yeah, just ask about like what sort of appraisal is being ordered. That way for yourself, your sellers, your buyers. Like I just think that's an important thing, because that is new. Like that's a new thing. The PDR is a new thing. So that's
Yeah.
just why I bring it up.
Yeah, no, and I've already heard some horror stories about it, and I'll be really interested to see, in years to come, all these properties that got appraisal waivers. I'm like, well, what if the bank ends up upside down on it or something like that, or you go to refinance and you figure out that, this PDR, and this appraisal waiver that you got done years ago was way off. So that's what scares me is, whenever we try to take the professional out of the equation, and I'm like, do we trust Open Door or, Redfin or Zillow
Right.
or whatever to be pricing our properties? No. So I'm not gonna, I don't want Joe Schmo, trying to price or inspect my property either. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Jenny says, do you have pros and cons on sellers getting an appraisal before listing their homes?
There's not really any cons that I can think of. Pros are going to be that, you have this appraisal that you can provide to prospective buyers, and to the future appraiser, if you want, that ends up appraising the listing. You're comfortable with the appraisal price. Hopefully the sellers are comfortable with it. I know a lot of times, you know, we and sellers, as in realtors and sellers, will have some disagreements about, you know, what's a realistic value. But, you know, if I can come in and, you know, unfortunately, a lot of times I come in and be the bad guy and tell them, you know, no, it's, you know, it is not worth that much. You know, that kind of takes that pressure off of you. And then with those pre-listing appraisals, you know, sometimes then you'll get a cash buyer, you know, whereas one of their conditions previously might have been, okay, I want to get an appraisal on it before we do this. You know, they might just accept my appraisal and go ahead, you know, and it just kind of streamlines the deal for you. But I can't really think of, and then, you know, also I'm pointing out things that, you know, I'm like, okay, if you're planning on financing this, you know, here's maybe some FHA issues that are going to show up, or you might want to, you know, might want to get this taken care of just beforehand, just in case. But I can't really think of any cons to it. And, you know, just don't do it too early, I guess. We want to make sure that, you know, we're doing it right before you list it, so that, you know, we're not missing out on any appreciation or, you know, depreciation that might have happened in the meantime. But hopefully that helps.
Do
I
you
think that's
find that?
smart. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Do you find, and I know you've answered this question, I just can't remember the answer. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Do you find that lenders will use your appraisal, or will they just kind of dismiss it and say, we're going to still get our own appraisal if it's?
So no, they are actually not allowed to use my appraisal. You know, and that's, you know, after Dodd-Frank and, you know, 2008 and all of this stuff. You're not allowed to pick your own appraiser is essentially what it comes down to. So the lender has to order their own appraisal. And, you know, they don't get to pick the appraiser. Essentially, it's, you know, it's done through an appraisal management company. So the lender will have to get their own appraisal. If it's being financed, it's very, very rare. I think I've had maybe, gosh, it was like one credit union out of Kansas that was willing to accept my pre-listing appraisal. Or maybe it was, no, they actually let the buyer pick their own appraiser, which was very strange, because that's not really a thing. The lender has to go out and get their own appraisal. But if you have an appraisal already that you can send to that appraiser, that's just more data. That's like, you know, it's literally, here, look, I've done all the work for you already. You know, and a big part of appraisals is, you know, are you valuing it the same way that your peers would? So definitely valuable information that, you know, that you can pass on to the appraiser that, you know, is going to end up doing it if it's a finance transaction.
Absolutely. And I'll even piggyback on that as a lender as well. Like if it's a weird property, especially if it's a rural property, like I can put a message in, and this is me specifically, Jamie at Guild. But I can put a message into my appraisal management company that we work with. And I can say, hey, you know, an appraisal was already done on this property by so and so. You know, if they're available for this assignment, you know, just let them know that it's available. And I have been able to sometimes get the same appraiser, but again, it does have to be technically like open for assignment for multiple different people. The same appraiser could pick it up. And then kind of like 2 + 2 = 4, right? If you're getting an appraisal within 30 to 60 days, a conventional appraisal should not change within that amount of time. So kind of like if the new buyer got an appraisal and it didn't match up to what you had, you could kind of submit the old appraisal as like, what do you mean? You know, like it should match up. So now lender and new appraiser explain to us why it's different, or change it, right? We would do an appraisal rebuttal at that point and say, okay, well, the reason is because you didn't use these comps. And so you need to be using these comps, or giving us a really good reason why you can't. So it does definitely help. Yeah, hopefully that helps from the lender perspective as well.
Yeah, that would be like the ultimate, you know, reconsideration of value request. You know, did you look at this appraisal? You know, why didn't you do it this way? You know, not to say that you know, appraisers are sometimes going to come up with mildly different numbers. You know, we're not going to come in at the exact same thing as each other all the time, but it should
Right.
be pretty darn similar.
Yeah, it shouldn't be like $10,000-$20,000 off.
Yeah.
You
No.
know, that's like, hello, what's going on?
Right.
I had something on the top of my head, but I will remember it. Do you guys have any other questions for those who are on?
I guess, what about,
Remember.
this is just for a random one, like what is, I don't know, like a little known fact or something that you wish just more realtors knew?
Let me see here. One that immediately pops into my head is the differences between a modular and a manufactured and a mobile home. And I do have a PowerPoint slide that I can share real quick if you want.
Yes, I
Okay.
love it. That's a very, very something I get a lot too, where they'll be
Okay.
like, hey, can you lend on mobile homes? And I'm like, yeah, send me the address. And they do. And I'm like, well, that's a stick built. That's a modular. So no problem.
Yes. Okay, hold on. So I've got dual monitors here. I'm gonna do my screen sharing. Okay, slideshow. Current slide. Okay. Attempting. Okay, come on now. Let's see. Well, that's not really what I want. All right, we'll see how this goes. All right. All right, can everybody see? Ooh. Can everybody see my slideshow?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. All right. So in our industry, a lot of times the terms modular and manufactured and mobile home are going to be used kind of interchangeably there. But they're all pretty different as far as, you know, the type of financing that's going to be available, you know, what the foundation looks like and all of that sort of thing. So what we're really looking for on those modular homes is they have to be built after 1971. The foundation is pretty much going to look like the foundation of a stick-built home. And then you're going to see these silver stickers underneath the, usually under the kitchen sink. That's going to be a UBC or an IRC sticker. And those I am allowed to compare to a stick-built home because they are pretty similar as far as in their, you know, construction. I might have to make a little bit of a quality adjustment, but I am allowed to compare modulars to other stick-built homes. But then for manufactured homes, those are going to have the red HUD tags on the outside. There's going to be 2 if it's a double wide, and then they're going to have the data plate, which is that legal size piece of paper with a map of the United States on it. I have seen that under the kitchen sink. I've seen it in the back of closets, also like taped onto the door where the furnace is. And then if you get down into the crawl space, you're going to see some metal beams supported by blocks and or piers on footers. And then a fun fact with manufactured homes is that even if they have those metal beams supported by blocks or piers on footers, if it was built after, or if it was built, excuse me, prior to June 15th, 1976, that's technically a mobile home. And a typical lender is not going to be able to finance that. And maybe Jamie can speak to that a little bit more. You know, and then your mobile homes are not going to have a permanent foundation. They're not going to be affixed, you know, usually got the tow hitch still hooked up to them and you could move them whenever you want. So I know we use those terms interchangeably quite a bit, but there's going to be some pretty significant differences in quality between the three, and it's definitely going to affect your pricing and the way that I'm going to be valuing it as an appraiser. And then if those HUD tags are missing, or, you know, if you get down into the crawl space, or if you don't want to get down into the crawl space and see what's going on down there, we do have IBTS. They're the only company that are able to verify the HUD labels for your manufactured homes or modular homes. if you order one of these letters, I mean, they get it back to you relatively quickly here and for a cheaper price. The problem is, if we're not doing this until, I, the appraiser, I come out and I say, uh-oh, I can't find the HUD tags. Looks like they got new siding and they must have trashed them. Then at that point, the lender is probably ordering a rush or a super rush, which is going to be more expensive, so they can figure out what those are and not delay your closing. Whereas if you do it up front as the listing agent, then, you are pricing it properly in the first place, and then you have this information, and then we're not going to be, holding up your deal, in the last hour there. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Yeah. I would say too, it's just important to work with a lender that knows what they're talking about when it comes to mobile, manufactured, or modular homes, whether you're building on your own land or buying, pre-built. Like I have a team member at Guild who can do chattel, who can do mobile, manufactured. Like we can practically do just about anything, but I've had people like, I had one in December. People had to terminate because their lender was positive that he could do a conventional loan on a manufactured home with lot rent, and he was wrong, and they lost their appraisal money, and they lost their earnest money, and they lost their inspection. So like, just make sure, like that's why we are kind of doing these Q&As, so you have expert people that you can contact if you'd like to. I'll kind of wrap us up with this question, unless you guys have more. You can drop them in the chat still. But from Mary, how can we reach out to you? How can we connect with you to, better make sure that agents and appraisers have that open communication? How can we chat with you?
Well, let me see here. I don't know if you want me to write my information in the chat, or if
that would be awesome.
Yeah, I'll write it
in the recording too.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So yeah, you can reach out to me. My cell phone number is 970-290-3836. My email is Breuer, Breuer, appraisals with an S @gmail.com. And yeah, really honestly, if you've got any questions about, types of adjustments you need to be making, if you get an appraisal and don't quite understand what's going on with it, I'm also happy to just take a look, and explain some stuff to you as well. And then I do host a CE class once a month through Educated Minds. It's a 2-hour CE class through the state, that has, a ton of information, a bunch of stuff that we talked about today and more. So yeah.
I love it. And if you guys don't already follow Mary on Facebook, go follow Brewer Appraisals. She posts new listings, super helpful Facebook page. And definitely when you have that CE class, feel free to send me the link. I'll share it with the group as well. And it's always good for me to be up to date on those things. See, a lot of the times as lenders and as realtors, we're calling the appraisal after something, or calling the appraiser after something has happened, right? And I'll just like to be proactive.
I know, yeah. Your chances
what should I know?
Your chances of getting an appraisal altered after the fact are kind of slim to none. Like, we're a very stubborn breed, just as real estate agents are. But yeah, the more information that you can give me up front, the better. It's better to proactively make your case up front versus trying to convince me after the fact, that I did it wrong. So
I love it. Well, thank you so much for doing this with us today. Everyone who's joined us live or recorded, this has been Ask a NoCo Pro appraisal version with Mary Brewer. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye, guys.